This is Dominique.
And Keely.
And you are listening to Booktrospective. And this week we are going to be reviewing The Long Game by
Elena Armas.
I always want to say I don't know. Isn't that an actress?
Anna de Armas,
I always want to say that, and so I'm always like, I always pause because I'm like, okay, what is this lady's name? I know her name. But yeah, okay. So there's always a bus. Keely, how was your week?
My week was okay. It was good. I got something that I've been working on for a while, but
so excited.
Yes, so excited. But I will be moving locations with the bookstore, so yeah.
We'll have more space to do everything.
Yes, have a dedicated room for us to record our podcast, and yeah, I'm super excited. How about you?
We might not hear as many buses.
Hopefully not. Well, I mean, it is like catty corner from
that's true
bus station, but
they don't really. I don't know. I mean, I guess they drive down the front. We're not directly in the front.
I don't think so. I think we'd be okay.
Yeah, we'll have to check out the acoustics. I have been so busy. We were supposed to record 2 days ago or a day ago. I've been reading a lot, so I literally like 5 minutes ago finished Iron Flame, and I'm depressed and annoyed and irritated and a lot of those things because what the hell? I don't know. Like, so I was reading it and then I stopped because our next episode is this, and I was like, okay, I have to get to it. I'm just glad to be done though, because now I don't have to keep scrolling on TikTok. I can actually indulge.
Yeah.
So
I've been trying to hold back on sending TikToks.
I was like, I'm so sorry, I'm behind. I've been like, I went to an award thing luncheon this week, and I had to do that, and I just been at a lot of places where I couldn't read or listen to the audiobook, and taking up my time. That stuff. But good news is we're almost to 200 listens. Yay!
Yay!
Small victories. So we appreciate you guys. Oh, actually, we appreciate you guys for listening. And somebody commented on last week's episode. I'm just gonna shout you out. I'm gonna find it. See here. Candy. So whoever Candy is, she said it was an amazing book.
Oh yay!
So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
So, yes, comment. Give us more comments, and I might remember to shout you out. Okay, so the blurb. Ready?
The blurb, yes. Okay. Get prepared for this. A disgraced soccer exec reluctantly enlists the help of a retired soccer star in the coaching a children's team in this small town love story in the vein of Ted Lasso and It Happened One Summer from the New York Times best-selling author of The Spanish Love Deception. Adalyn Reyes has spent years perfecting her daily routine: wake up at dawn, drive to the Miami Flames FC offices, try her hardest to leave a mark, go home, and repeat. But her routine is disrupted when a video of her in an altercation with the team's mascot goes viral. Rather than fire her, the team's owner, who happens to be her father, sends Adalyn to the middle of nowhere, North Carolina, where she's tasked with turning around the struggling soccer team of the Green Warriors as a way to redeem herself. Her plans crumble upon discovering that the players wear tutus to practice, impractical, keep pet goats messy, and are terrified of Adalyn's counterproductive, and are 9-year-old kids. To make things worse, also in town is Cameron Caldoni, goalkeeping prodigy whose presence is somewhat of a mystery. Cam is the perfect candidate to help Adalyn, but after one very unfortunate first encounter involving a rooster, Cam's leg, and Adalyn's bumper, he's also set on running her out of town. But banishment is not an option for Adalyn, not again. Helping this ragtag children's team is her road to redemption, and she is playing the long game, with or without Cam's help.
Hey.
Whew.
That was not an easy one to read. I feel like the words are never hard. Hey, did better than I did. I just have to read my own notes, which is not always easy. So, do you have a word
See, I've been struggling with this all day. And I feel like I struggle with it every single time. But all that I've really been able to come up with that I actually like somewhat or felt whatever was sporty.
Yeah, it is. I don't disagree. I was gonna say something like rural. I can't say very well. Or I don't know. Like woodsy.
Okay, yeah.
So that's pretty simple. So I am prepared today, which is unusual. Don't get used to it. I had time. I picked my people, and I wrote a little summary. So let me see. Where is it? Okay. So this book follows Adalyn Reyes, and she is the daughter of the owner of the Miami Flame soccer team in Miami, Florida. And she recently went viral. She knocked the head off of the mascot for their team mid-game, his name is Sparkles.
Which I feel is weird, but okay.
And her dad sends her to Green Oaks.
Yes.
Green Oaks, North Carolina, for a mystery mission. Really, it's just to get her out of like the picture while they try to deal with what's going on, the repercussions of her new fame. And Cameron Caldoni is an abruptly retired soccer star, and he's hiding out in Green Oaks for an unknown reason. Adalyn believes that she booked the same house that Cameron is actually renting, when in fact she actually rented a rundown cabin that's at the back of the same property that his property is on. And she also finds herself in charge of a youth soccer team. So she had no idea what she knew was soccer related, because that's what they do. But she was not expecting a group of 7 to 10-year-old girls. And Cameron also happens to be coaching that team, and he is doing it as a favor to the town's mayor / barista / bartender. I don't know what else she does.
/ and head of like the lead singer in a band or something, like
Josie. Josie does Josie
a little bit of everything.
This is a grumpy meets grumpy, so not a grumpy sunshine. They are both grumpy.
Yes.
Enemy to lovers, forced proximity, love stories. So Cameron is dealing with a traumatic event from his recent past that made him run, and Adalyn has always been seen as like the frigid ice queen. Her only life goal has ever been to please her dad, who is never pleased, and trying to one day step into his role as leading the Miami Flames. So they basically get to know each other and help each other come to terms with their buried turmoil. So that is my generalized summary. So from here on out, there will be spoilers. This is your spoiler warning. So if you have not read and you want to read it first, this is your warning to stop. If you have read or you don't care about being spoiled, let's get started. So, okay, so this is a dual POV, which I love. Adalyn is in her dad's office. She, like we said, knocked the head off of the mascot, and they're basically playing back the video of that happening. And she's in the office with her dad, so he's the owner again of the team, and David, who is the vice president and also her ex-boyfriend. She is the leading communication person for the team, and so she's like, well, I can handle this. And essentially we get from this meeting that she's not been fired, but she's been semi-fired.
Definitely disgraced.
Definitely. And her dad asked, why did you do it? Because it's just abrupt. She just went up in the middle of this game and knocked this mascot's head off. I don't know what the head of a sparkle mascot looks like. I'm very curious. But anyways, so she says she can't tell her dad why she attacked the mascot because she's not ready to have that conversation. And essentially she gets exiled, and he wants her to leave Miami immediately, less than 24 hours, because she's a distraction. She has 6 million views on her video, and they have to handle that. And he doesn't want her mom to know. So he wants her to be gone through the end of the season, which is months away. So she is sent to North Carolina for a team known as the Green Warriors. And she's on the phone with her best friend. She's landed. She's driving out into the middle of nowhere. Her best friend's name is Matthew, and they're kind of talking about what happened. And he's like, I can't find this team. He's been trying to look for it. And she isn't paying attention. All of a sudden, there's a rooster or a chicken, and she stops, and then she hears like a growl, and she panics, and she hits the gas instead of the brake, and she runs into a tree, and also she hits something else in the process. And we switch to Cameron. Cameron is what she hit. So he is like, there's this girl in this car. She looks unconscious, and she just hit me. And he pulls her out of the car, and when she comes to, she asks, like, why are you touching me? Why am I on the ground? And he says, you hit me with your car. And he has a British accent. He's like, I don't know if I... You hit me with your paw. I'll never do that. Okay. He tells her that either you're lost or trespassing. And at this point, I hated his accent. I was like, I don't know. It took me a while to get into it, because I did the audiobook, and I was just like, oh, God. So, yeah. And he says that she's trespassing. She's like, well, I'm renting this cabin. And he says, no, I'm renting this cabin, and you're in my driveway. And she says, no, I'm renting this cabin. And he's like, you need to go to the hospital and get checked for a concussion. She's like starting to get a knot on her head. And he tries to pick her up, and she starts like kung fu, like kicking his butt. And she's like, don't touch me. Like, why are you touching me? Which I agree. Like,
yeah, I get it.
Strange man. Like, why are you touching me? So we switch back to Adalyn's point of view, and she pulls up the confirmation and go, like, he's like, whatever, forget you, I'm going in the house. So he goes in the house. So she pulls up the email, knocks on the door, and like holds the phone up and is like, look, here's the confirmation. And she thinks this man looks familiar, but she doesn't know why. So he reads the email and says, you booked a room at, no, the place she thought that she booked a room at is called Lazy Elk Lodge, which is where he's staying, but she actually didn't. She booked it, and I can't remember what it's called, but she essentially booked this rundown cabin that's off to the side. And as he's saying this, he reads the address, and like she's looking and sees this little cabin that's like a shed, like a she shed, and she sees the like numbers on it for the address. He's like, you're not gonna make it out there. So she's like, okay, this is a challenge. So she's gonna try and tough it out, and she does recognize him. He is actually a world famous soccer star, and he recently retired. So it's very strange that he happens to be out here in the middle of nowhere. She's like, he has this beard that he's grown in, like he's trying to hide out or something. So we go back to Cameron, and he is apparently a soccer coach, and there's a bunch of little girls that he's coaching. They're all like 7 to 10, and they wear tutus. They don't pay attention. I mean, you know what 7 to 10-year-olds act like. And he says, I need some coffee, and he leaves. But when he goes to leave, he runs into Adalyn. And she is talking to the mayor, who is Josie, who asks if they're both going to be working for the Green Warriors. And Adalyn says, absolutely not. You're fired. So they are off to a wonderful start. Back to Adalyn's point of view, Josie was like, okay, let's just take a beat. Like, hold on a minute. Because obviously she hired Cameron. She basically tells them both, like, she played on the soccer team when she was a girl, and Grandpa Joe, that's his name, he had it, and so, like, now she has Cameron here coaching, and Adalyn's like, no, this is my team. And she wants to know why he's there, and Josie's like, I hired him, but I mean, he's kind of like a volunteer. He's not getting paid. And Josie says she brought the team back last year, and Adalyn just doesn't know anything about it. Like, she's shocked. She cannot believe it's, like, a youth soccer team. She thought she was going to, like, check out. Because her dad basically told her, like, well, I want you to go out here. There's something I've been working on. I'm, like, interested in. So she's thinking, like, it's another, like, league team, not kids. Josie says, this is Little League. And Adalyn she's shocked. She can't figure out, like, why she's sent there. She doesn't know why Cam would even be here coaching a Little League team. And Josie asks that she keeps Cam's identity because no one in town knows who he is. And she's like, okay, why are you hiding? Thinking to herself. Her friend tells her, Matthew, he also is like texting her, and he says there is now a remix to the video of her attacks. Like, they put, essentially it's going viral on TikTok. And
yeah, and if you can imagine, you know, any viral video, I mean, what was the
anything.
Yeah.
The freaking Montgomery.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Brawl.
And the hide your kids, hide your wife, and all of those.
All I'm thinking is Carol Baskin, Tiger King. Like, it's one of those. So yeah. And so she goes home for the evening. She goes in her cabin. It's disgusting. Like, it's like dusty. There's a 4-poster bed, which she said she always wanted, but it's prehistoric. Like, there's no washer. It looks like no one's ever thought about this place in years. So she's like, whatever, I'm gonna try to tough it out. And she, like, hears a creak, and she sees some glowing eyes, and she literally runs up out of this cabin. So we go to Cam, in his point of view, and we learn that he has cats. And I'm like, oh, that's what you saw in the cat. Like, I mean,
right?
There's no monsters out there. And he realizes that Adalyn is out in her car asleep. And he's like, this girl's a pain. Like, oh my God, like, I just came out here to get some goddamn peace, and God sent me this heathen. So he goes out there, and she is just like he like knocks on the window. She doesn't wake up, so he knocks harder, and she's so abrasive. I'm like, girl,
right?
You do not
chill.
Like, she is just so like, what? Like, honey, you're sleeping in your car in the middle of the woods. Somebody should check on you. So he's like, just pack it up and go home. You can't sleep out in your car. And he looks, and like she's like wearing these like silky pajamas. He's like, oh God, good God. So she screams and tells him, I'm not leaving, and she wouldn't be there if I had a choice, and I hadn't been banished out here, so I'm not leaving. So he's kind of like, what? Like, why would you be banished out here? So she goes back in the cabin, and he's still sitting out there, and see a shoe come like flying out of the cabin, and he realizes, like he goes inside and realizes how terrible this thing is, because he's never been in there either. No one paid any attention to it. And she's in there trying to use this shoe as like a hammer, like to tear apart this bed. And he says, I'm coming to extend a peace treaty. And he says, let's just reach out to management. But she actually left her phone in the car. So he takes her number, and he's like, we can text management, give them my name, and say like, hey, can you guys fix up the cabin? We go to Adalyn again, and she's with the girls on the soccer team, and they want Cam to come back. Now, they never call Cam. They only know that his name is Cam, but they never call him that. I think throughout this book, they call him like Coach Cam, Coach Camouflage, Coach Chamomile, Coach Camelback.
All kinds of.
It's so cute. I love it. So they never call him by his name, but they want him to come back. And except for there's like one girl named Maria, and she actually likes Adalyn, and that's the one that approaches them. She's like, oh, did they send you? And she says, yeah, but she wants Adalyn to stay because she likes her. And she says that, I don't think that you have resting witch face. Adalyn's mom calls her during this, and she's pissed. She's like, she calls from her dad's office. So the mom's at the dad's office. They're not married. And her mom is, so Adalyn is half Latina. And I'm assuming her dad's white. It doesn't ever really say.
I'm assuming so.
Yeah, because she's white presenting.
Yeah.
And like we get that, like she speaks some Spanish, but not very much because we learned that later. But her mom is like, adios mio, like she's like going off, and she's like, why would your dad send you? Like, are you okay? She is pissed off, and that's why he didn't want her obviously to tell her mom, which she didn't. And she tells her mom, I'm fine, I'm on a work trip. Her mom's like, I don't believe you. She says, Matthew told me, and she's like, dang it, like why? And essentially, Matthew is like a son to her. And the mom asks, what did the mascot do? And Adalyn still just won't tell what happened. And so she tries to talk to her dad because she was hoping like that it was actually her dad calling, but he's like short, nasty. He doesn't think about her. He tells her she just needs to focus on her job out there. And he says, like, he knew that you wouldn't make it. Like, you can come home basically, but like you can't have this job back. So you're gonna have to do something else. He wants her to go in like real estate. I guess he owns properties too. He's a rich man. I don't know. And after she gets off the phone with him, she realizes like she can't find the girls. She's freaking out. She does find them, and they pulled out like every gym sport equipment thing, like made a horrible mess while she was on the phone. And then of course Cam comes in and is like, what is going on? And then Josie comes running in, and she's like, the parents are here and they know. We switch over to Cam, and apparently Cam had gone to get coffee from Josie, who is also a coffee owner, barista. And one of the parents, I believe it was Diane. Diane is like the leader of the PTO.
Diane is
that
Karen.
Yeah, she's a Karen. She's that mom. And essentially, somehow they find out about Adalyn. They see the video, and they don't want her in charge. So they come to practice, and she's like, I think it's Diane. She's like, my daughter wants to switch from ballet to kung fu now because she saw your video. Just so dramatic. And they want Cam to stay, so Adalyn like does a quick switch. She's like, "Oh yeah, like he's not going anywhere." And she's like, She offers them to buy something, and they're like, "You just want to come in here?" She's like, "People always want to come to this town and throw money at us." And she's like, I can remember it was Green Oaks. I'm like, "What is this place?" It's Green. I remember Green Oaks. She's like, "We have an angel looking over us here. We don't need your money." And she asked Cam after this is all settled, "Have you Googled me?" And he's like, "No, he doesn't. He doesn't go on the internet. He's one of those." So she begs him to stay and coach, and he's like, no. So she threatens to expose him because she knows that the town doesn't know who he is. So she's like, if you don't stay and help me, I'm going to tell everyone who you are. So she blocked him. And he also, being nice when they get back home, even though he shouldn't have, brings her an air mattress because the bed's disgusting. And she doesn't want it. And the one thing about he's obviously British, so he says darling a lot, and she is triggered, which I don't blame her about that either. I do not like sweet names. Like, when we're not sweet. Like, don't call me honey, baby, darling. I know that's like a Brit thing, so they do that. So, anyhow. We go back to Adalyn's POV, and she tells Josie that she blackmailed Cam into staying, and she also tells her about, like, she doesn't tell her why, but she tells her she smacked the mascot head off, and Josie's like, okay, I don't care. Like, Josie's like, I like you, and Adalyn says, why? And Josie says, I've been hurt, I understand, I've been engaged 4 times, like, you're good, girl. So, Cam comes in, because they're at the coffee shop, and I want to say he had Diane with him, but somehow or rather, Cam gets her signed up to do goat yoga. Which pisses her off, and she's like, you know what? There's like a brochure with all these like town events. She's like, we're gonna do every single event in this thing. So, they go to do goat yoga, and it is at the Vasquez farm, which Maria, the little girl who was like, oh, I like you, is a Vasquez. It's her dad's farm, and it's her dad, and her brother there. They do a lot of events there, so it's her, Cam, Josie, and all the parents, all the people of the town, because that's probably it. And Maria comes up and is like, oh, I can't stay. They don't let me stay for adult stuff. But she says, hi, this is Brandy, the goat. She's blind and anxious. And if she gets worked up, she poops everywhere.
Which I feel that.
Nervous poops. So.
Spirit animal.
There's so many cute moments in this. And that's hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, it makes me think, have you seen, there's like this, sweatshirt, it's like something about IBS or like my stomach's.
Oh yes.
It makes me think of that. I can't think of what it is, but if you're listening, you probably know. If you have IBS, you've seen this sweatshirt.
So I'm like, I'm sorry, my belly hurts, and I'm being.
Yes, my belly hurts today or something. Yeah, it's hilarious. So they're at yoga, and Adalyn is this most like uptight, uncoordinated person. She wears heels everywhere, even though they're in rural North Carolina and there's no paved roads. Like if you've read the Bellinger series by Tessa Bailey, she reminds me of the one sister, like, that's, like, always wearing heels and stuff. But, anyway, so she tries to, like, bend down and do, I don't know, downward dog or something, and Brandy is blind and almost knocks her over. So, who grabs her but Cam, and she feels his, like, big, strong man hands around her, and she's like, oh, God, like, I don't know why I'm liking this. And so, Josie's like, hey, like, can you help her? And so he starts helping her like work through these positions, and I said, oh, like he would definitely talk you. He's like got this calm like British voice, and he's like, they're there, like you're good. And she's embarrassed because she's feeling it, and so she leans into the defensive because that is her like her method of protecting herself. She's like, you're stupid, whatever, blah blah blah. So we go back to Cam, and he is with Adalyn, and she's like, I want to start having meetings every Wednesday. She has these binders. Like, she's very serious about her role, and he's constantly like, this is a children's soccer team. But she's prepping for the games, and he asks if she's sleeping well on the air mattress, and she doesn't really answer. And she's like, I want to get media out here, get coverage for the kids, and he stiffens, and again, like, he's hiding. And she keeps talking, and all he can think about is how he was touching her at yoga and what kind of underwear she wears after seeing her in the car. And while she's talking, she's like messing with the buttons on her shirt or something. He is distracted. So she's feeling him, he's feeling her. Things are brewing. We go back to Adalyn's POV, and she's trying to renovate the cabin, which is,
oh Lord,
it's a mess. Like,
she's definitely like a girl boss and very independent, but like
will not ask for help.
Overly independent. Yeah.
Like, a good leader knows when to ask for help and delegate. That's all I'm saying. Also, you have money. And the reason she doesn't leave also this cabin is because, like, she called around, her assistant did, there's literally nowhere else in the town to stay. So, like, she can't go anywhere else. So he comes in and he's like, do you ever relax? Like, you look like he's basically like, you don't have fun, you don't have any hobbies. And she's like, I do. I listen to true crime. Feel you. I feel you. She's like, I have friends at home. And she's like, what do you do? He says, I like to hike. He likes to be outdoors. He likes to meditate. And he says, you should try it sometime. You need to relax and quit overthinking everything and everyone. Which, no, she is my, Brandy is your spirit animal. And Adalyn is mine. I just have this firm exterior to protect myself. So we switch over to Cam's POV, and it's their first game, and their uniforms are atrocious. They're literally the same uniforms that they had in the 80s. They are like, I don't know, like pink. They're terrible. So she's like panicking and worked up, and Cam's worked up because there's a big crowd for today's game, and he's trying to be recognized. And he doesn't think, like, again, he's like, Little League is not that serious, but then he sees the other coach from the team, and she looks at him, and she goes, "You're going down, bitch." And he's like, "What the?" And
he was like, "I never expected a children's soccer league to be so cutthroat."
He goes like, and Adalyn doesn't see her, but he goes like, "What the fuck?" And she's like, "Language coach," and he's like, "She just freaking called me a B, and said I was going down." I'm cracking up. So none of the girls are like where they're supposed to during this game. Like the goalie is not the goalie, and they do horrible throughout this whole game. And the only goal they make is because one of the girls steals the ball and literally scores it into their own goal, so it's a point for the other team. And then that same coach who was like going off on Cam earlier looks at Adalyn later and was like, calls her princess, and she is like spinning, and she's like, "You should go back to where you come from." So Cam's like, "You know what? We do need to have meetings." So they agree to meet, and they're like, "We got to fix this team." So we go to Adalyn's POV, and they are at the BBBL, Beer, Barbecue, and Boogie by the Lake, as Josie calls it. And everyone's there, so all the same people from Goat Yoga are there. And Diane is the worst. She's there too. And Adalyn also like doesn't have any good clothes. She came from Miami. Like, I don't know if the girl owns a coat. Everything she wears is like silk and like in the heel. Like, she's wearing heels out in the middle of this. They're like in the woods. I don't know. It made me think of, I always talk about Vampire Diaries. I'm so sorry. But it makes me think of the couple episodes of Vampire Diaries when they would go to like on Tyler Lockwood's like property, and they'd like, "Oh, we're going down like by the watering hole." Like, that's what I was picturing in this. Which where are we at? North Carolina?
Yeah.
They were in Virginia. Same place, Mystic Falls. I don't know. So Josie also makes beer. So this was when we learned that she does that. Jack of all trades, I swear. So Cam starts talking to Adalyn, and he tells her how he was raised by his grandmother. And you know what? I just thought about something. That's why I'm like, why is everything so big? The sound will be so much better. I'm sorry if I was loud the first half of this. I just turned my mic down. Anyways, so Cam starts talking to her about how he was raised. He says he was raised by his grandmother, and like he said, he used to live in the country for a little bit, but it didn't go out well. And Adalyn shares like how she never really had that experience with her grandparents. And she has already mentioned this a few times, but he wears a signet ring on his pinky. And I was like, how pretentious. And he says like it actually was from his grandmother, and it was her father's, and she gave it to him, and it was all that he has left of her now. And then he gives her his jacket because she's not dressed for the cold. And then Brandy panics. Remember, when Brandy panics, she poops. So she poops all over the place, and Adalyn falls in it, wearing his jacket. So then she just lays there covered in poop. And then Brandy, because she's blind, starts wandering off into the water. And Adalyn is like, "Oh my gosh, she's going to drown." So she goes and gets her, which Cam is like, he's watching. So after this incident, her and Cam meet, and they're starting to be serious about the team. And she's starting to recognize her attraction growing for him.
Yeah.
She orders new uniforms, and she's like, "I want you to wear a matching tracksuit." He says, "Absolutely not." She orders it anyways. And she talks about how no one in the town likes her. No one will even talk to her except for Josie, him like half the time, and the girls. She sends Matthew a picture of the team just like to talk like about it. And of course he recognizes Cam, and he is a super fan. He is like sending her like 1,000 text messages, and she just turns her phone off. So Cam sees like the binders, and he's like, "So have I. Like, do you have a file for me in that binder?" And she says, "Maybe." And she's like, "Let's call it a day and go home," which she feels like is weird because like they don't stay together. And he calls her Ada Darling, which she likes this one. Mm-hmm. So she doesn't like Darling, but she likes this. This one's different than like Addie or Adalyn or anything like that. And they're still at the like field or wherever they're at when they're talking about this. And so one of the girls, which is Maria, I believe, recognizes how she's like looking at Coach. She's like, "Why are you looking at Coach like that?"
I love her, by the way.
I know, she's my favorite. And then Maria also like talks about her farm animals, and she's like, "Yeah, I have a rooster named Sebastian Stan, but he's missing." I love it, and I love Sebastian Stan. Anywho, so she sees Maria's dad there. His name is Robbie, and she wants to go talk to him, but she like this is where she starts talking about how her Spanish isn't very good. and she's nervous because she doesn't want to embarrass herself. So she tries to talk to him a little bit, and she notices there's a Miami Flames jacket, and so she asks if he likes it, and she's like, no, and he says no. My son likes the team, and she starts rambling, and she's like, oh, I can buy you tickets, but that turns him off a little bit because he's like, I don't really want charity. You know, we've already had so much charity, and I don't know if they've already said this point, but I'll say it. So Maria's mom died of cancer at some point a while back, and so like they've had a lot of help, and essentially the Vasquezes are also in debt, and so Cam comes back during this conversation, and he asks about the binder again, and she calls him an ass, and he goes, come on, darling, you can do better than that, let it out. And I'm screaming on the inside. I'm like, see what I'm saying? Talk you through it. So Maria comes over again with her brother, and he recognizes Cam because he had the Miami Flames jacket, and he like loves soccer. And he starts to say, oh, you're Cameron, and she's like, just Cam. Adalyn's like, just Cam. And he catches the hint. And her brother, his name is Tony, and he's older. He's like 17. So they're slated to go to another little class event because they've done goat yoga and the BBL thing. So now they're doing pottery, which is also held by Josie. Would you believe it? I don't know that anybody else works in this town. I mean, the only thing she doesn't do is the work that Robbie does. So as usual, she's overdressed. And she's like waiting outside for Cam because she's nervous to go in here because nobody likes her, essentially, or so she thinks. And she goes inside, and Josie's like, absolutely not. Like, you're going to get like clay all over you. So she makes her change into these pink overalls and pink sneakers. And of course, who does she get paired with but Cam? And of course, he knows what he's doing because he's done everything. And all she's thinking about is like how he's helping her and how he's goes so good with the girls and how he'll make like a really good dad. And if you know anything, okay, there's this guy on TikTok, and I think he lives in like France. Of course, he's gorgeous. And he does like pottery, and you know, he makes TikTok, so they're like attractive. And when people like, I don't know, they call like throwing the clay. I don't know anything about pottery, excuse me. But they like, I don't know what it's called, but they like, essentially they smack the clay. Which this guy on TikTok does. So if you're curious as to what this looks like, I'm gonna have to find them so somebody can look up. But anyways, so as Cam is like smacking this clay onto the little thing, the wheel, she's like, it looks like he's spanking the clay. So she's like, my mind is in the gutter. Oh my gosh. And she just starts thinking about like how she hasn't ever really been flirted with. David is really her only relationship, and he essentially just used her for his job to get to be vice president of her dad's company. And David basically had said like, she's so frigid, she's boring, and he just couldn't endure her. And she had overheard him saying that to someone else. And she's pretty zoned out, and she's like tensing up, and Cam notices and is like, how long have you been having panic attacks? And she's like, I'm not having a panic attack. And she's literally crushed the clay, like it's destroyed. And Cam is like holding her hands to like get her relaxed. And he's like, I don't know if you noticed, like, but everyone's like, look. So she does, and she's like, oh my gosh. So when they go to leave, she comes out. They had drove separately. Why? I don't know. They live essentially in the same place. But okay. They drove separately, and her tire is flat. So she has to ride with Cam. And he's like, I'll ask Robbie, Maria's dad, if he can fix it. And she says, I don't think that Tony likes me, talking about the brother. And he says, like, all the kids adore you. And she is like, well, Tony gets weird. And he's like, because he likes you. You're a beautiful woman. And he doesn't know how to act around beautiful women. And he gets tongue-tied. And that's why he calls you ma'am. So she's like, oh, did you just call me beautiful? Okay. So when they get back, she like gets out because it's getting weird in the car. And she like runs to the cabin. But then she realizes, I don't have my keys. And she's like, I'm pretty sure the door's unlocked, but I don't have my phone. So he's like, of course. Like, he's like, I try to do nice things for her, and she makes it so hard because she just is a mess. So as like they're discussing this phone situation, because the car's not going to be fixed till tomorrow, and so he goes into the cabin. She's like, I didn't want you to come in here, and it's a mess. Like before, it was just like dirty and old, but it is completely a mess because she's half renovated. She hasn't done her laundry because she doesn't have a washer and dryer, and she won't ask Cam obviously for his. So she has been like air drying her underwear. She's sleeping on the air mattress, which he didn't realize she was still sleeping on. And he's like, why don't you ask for help? And she says, because I don't want to be accused of being spoiled all the time. Like everyone just says I'm like spoiled, I'm a princess, yada yada. So he like stalks off, comes back, and he has a toolbox, and he grabs his hammer and like goes to town on his bed. And that never really goes anywhere. I don't know what the point of it was. But hey, whatever. Anger management, whatever. So we go back over to Cam in his POV, and his former agent calls. They're also friends, and his agent's name is Michael. Let me in. And his agent is like, there's this offer in LA. I think it's for like a show, probably like one of those Sports Center shows, talk, something like that. And Cam's like, I want my privacy. And Michael says like he gets it after what happened in LA. He's traumatized. Cam's like, I'm not traumatized, and I'm not hiding. But obviously,
right.
So he tells him like, look, I'll consider it. And Adalyn sees him. I don't know. I can't remember if he's out on the porch or whatever. And he doesn't have a shirt on, of course. And he has like tattoos all over him. Gorgeous. And he's like, he noticed her looking, and he tells her like, if you ask nicely, I'll take my pants off too. Yes, please. Okay. So as they're outside, one of his cats chases after the rooster, which is what she saw in the beginning. And
which I'm assuming is Sebastian Stan.
And he like chases after the cat and grabs her, and he's like, Daddy's not happy. So he tells her like, I have 2 cats, and that's when they put together that the rooster is most likely Sebastian Stan, because Maria had said that the cow on their farm was sad because the rooster was missing. And he's like, and that's when she always assumed that the rooster was Cam's, and Cam's like, no, I have cats, like he's not mine. And then he also they start talking, and she's like, can you just tell me like a random fact? And he starts saying like how he likes wildlife, and he tells her, I think it's a lion, there's some animal that will die if the female does not find a mate. And she's like, that's just so sad, like that is the saddest I've ever heard. Oh my god. And they get really like close in this conversation. And he starts thinking like how he's really just been misjudging her, and because she's kind of like, she's like, well, what if she's hadn't had the opportunity? Like, what if it's not her fault that she doesn't find love talking about this animal, but really she's talking about herself. And he's like, I've really misjudged her, and oh my gosh, she smells so good. And while they're like leaning in, the cat scratches him and runs off. And so she like grabs his arm, Adalyn does, and she starts checking the scratch, and then she starts looking at his tattoos. I don't blame you. And she asks, like, does your cat, Willow, which was the cat he was holding, he has another cat named Pierogi.
Yes.
And she asks, like, does your cat do that often? And he's like, no, she's jealous. And she also like looking at his tattoos, and like he has a tattoo of his grandmother and then some others. So then we go over to another day, and the girls lose another soccer game, and they are so sad. And so Cam tries to encourage them, but like he's a man without emotions. I mean, you know how they like try to say the right thing, but they're like, oh, they're just stupid and blah blah blah, and they're like, that's not helping. That's not helping. And Adalyn tells them, you're trying, but it's not helping because they're crying, and neither one of them know what to do with crying kids. So Tony comes over, Maria's brother, and is like, let's get them snow cones. Like, I saw a snow cone thing. And Cam's like, yes, perfect. And he gives them like entirely too much money. And Tony's like, this is too, and then he just goes. And he also tells Tony, like, get me something warm. And he looks at the time, and he's like, okay, it's after 12, so not a coffee. So Tony comes back, and he also thanks him, like, thanks for keeping my secret, because he knows that he recognized him. And Tony says, yeah, I understand, because, like, when his mom died, people are just nosy. He gets, like, people. And Cam tells him, like, hey, keep the change, like, get something nice for yourself. And Tony says, actually, I want to keep it because I'm trying to go to college, and my dad just really needs help with all the money. I'm like, so sad. And Adalyn hears this, and she's like, hey, like, would you like to work with the girls? And so she offers him a job. And the drink that Tony ended up getting, something warm, was a tea. And he gives it to Cam, who gives it to Adalyn. And it's because Cam has, like, a burning desire to drink coffee all day long. He drinks it all day. But Adalyn had told him weeks ago or whatever, like, I don't drink coffee after noon. So he, like, remembered that little piece and was like, I'm going to get you something warm because you don't have a coat, obviously. And she doesn't drink coffee after noon. So how sweet. And Cam grabs a snow cone for himself, and she's like, oh, are those good? Like, I haven't had a snow cone in years. And he tells her, like, have a lick. And she does. And passions are brewing. And, at this point in time, one of the girls calls him Coach Cornfield. We switch over to Adalyn, and we're at a game, and she looks up, and she sees a guy at the game with a freaking logo of her. So there had been a point where her friend Matthew sent her this thing. Essentially, there was a company that is making energy drinks and took her face from the video and made her the logo of their energy drink. Yep. And the guy that's there is wearing the freaking shirt. And so she panics, tries to, like, get up and run, and she breaks her ankle because she's still wearing it. she didn't break her ankle, but she like rolls her ankle or something like that. And Cam's like, okay, well, let me like help you. He takes her home and he tries to carry her, but she's like, no, like I'm fine, even though she's having these panic attacks. And also when she gets home, she sees a package from Matthew and she opens it and all it says is "make it up to me," and it's freaking Cam's jersey. So we go over to Cam and he's thinking about how sad Adalyn was, like, and how weird she acted at the game. And she starts sending him voice memos. And she's like, hey, apparently it's like storming. And she's like, I have your cat, but can I just keep your cat? Because I don't feel great. And she's helping me get through the storm. And I'm in a lot of pain. I think I took too many pain pills. But I don't want to complain about the cabin. I'm trying to be strong and independent. And I know I don't have any friends. Like, it is so sad. It is the saddest thing. And like, she just keeps sending them. And she's like, maybe I'm not friendly or nice. And I know you don't like me that much either. And he's like, what the? So he gets his clothes on and he runs. And of course her door's unlocked. He's like, okay, because she can't ever remember to lock her door. And she's like passed out holding the cat. And he picks her up and he's like looking down. He has a black jersey on and he only sees the front of it. And he's like, this is my jersey. Because when he played for whatever team it was, he was the only one that wore a black jersey because he was the goalie. And everybody else probably wore a different color. I can't remember. It's not relevant. And she's like, how embarrassing. So she wakes up and she is in bed with a cat. So obviously she's not in the cabin because she doesn't have a bed. And she goes down and she like limps down to the kitchen or wherever. And Cam is in there doing his yoga and she startles him and she forgot like that she was wearing the jersey. And also she's not wearing any underwear.
Nope.
And he admits to her that he's jealous that another guy sent her his jersey to wear. And she's like, no, like Matthew sent it. He loves you and he wants me to have you sign it. and he tries to like pick her up because she's on her phone. She's like, please stop picking me up. And he's like, why? And she says, because I'm not wearing any underwear. and he goes, I wish you had to do that. So she's sitting at the counter and he's like, are you hungry? And he pulls out like everything in his fridge, like croissants, ham, bacon, eggs, every single thing. And she's like, are you expecting somebody? Because like, obviously you're not making this for me. And she's like, I need to shower. I need to go to the doctor. I need to get my car. And he says, you're going to stay here either on the couch or in the bed. I called the doctor. They'll come here and you have a room. She's like, a room? Okay. And so she settles in and Cam has some errands to run. The doctor does come and is like, hey, you need to take it easy for like a week or two. And she wants to go home because she's like, this is your house, Cam. Like, and he's like, absolutely not. And he says, it's interesting that Willow likes you because Willow doesn't like anyone. And he came back with shopping bags. He has bought her tactical clothes. So he bought her jeans, boots, sweaters, hoodies, warm North Carolina wear.
Yep.
And she's like, I can't believe that he, like, no, you couldn't have. But yeah, he did. So he tells her Josie's going to come and help her move some things from her little shack into his house. And he threatens to burn that cabin down if she doesn't let him take care of her. Love a man. Love a man. That is serious. And he asked her, like, what made you so scared yesterday that you almost broke your ankle? But she won't tell him. And she says, like, well, you were looking at me like I'm something precious, and no one ever looks at me like that. So he leaves. Josie comes and does that. And when he comes back, she tells him, like, Josie left food. So he warms it up, and they eat dinner. And it overwhelms her because she's like, this is like a normal couple thing, like sitting at the table, eating. It's so strange. So she's like, I need my binder. Like, I need some distraction. And she's like, if the girls win 3 games, like, they need so many points to go into the final round. Otherwise, they'll just get 3rd or 4th place. And so she's like real concerned about that because they haven't been doing well. And Cam's like, yeah, like he's going along with it. And she's like, why are you so compliant? Because, they've been like at each other's throat this whole time. And he says, I'm just done like with the back and forth. So she says, well, we're still like, she was like, he said I'm done with the game. And she's like, well, I mean, I signed us up for all those activities. And she takes a little while off, but she does finally go back to practice. And the girls are so happy because they like wanted to have her a party. They were worried about her. It's really cute. And when she gets back, they tell her that Robbie, Tony, and Cam actually redid the shed and made her a little office.
How cute!
And I'm like, oh, that's so special. And the girls end up winning 2 games while she was gone. And they finally got their new uniforms, and even Cam is wearing his, so she's very pleased. So she starts avoiding him because things are just weird, staying in the house. And they go somewhere. They have some kind of event they go to. And she goes to get drinks, and while she's getting them, she's like talking to Josie, and Josie's like, "Hey, like, why don't you go save him?" Because she sees him talking to Diane, and Diane is trying to flirt with Cam. So she's like, I can't remember. She gave some horrible excuse, and she's like, I need you. And Diane literally starts following them as they're walking away. So he picks her up and like throws her over his shoulder, and they like run off and hide. And while they're hiding, they're like really cozy. And she makes like this little whimper sound, and he's like, "You made that the night I carried you in the house," and he really likes it. And she closes her eyes like they're gonna lean in and kiss, and he's like, "No, open your eyes. I want you to look at me." And asks what she wants from him, and they start to kiss, but then they hear a car, so they're interrupted. So we go back to Cam in his POV, and he's cooking dinner, and he's waiting for her to get home. Oh, and he wants to pamper her, and he's like, "I like taking care of her." And we find out that they had another game, and the girls sadly like did not get enough points to make it into the finals. So she's coming home late, and they were all sad. And she's like, "I had to buy them like 3 rounds of ice cream or milkshakes or something." And she asks Cam like, "Why are you retired?" And he tells her the truth, and he says that he basically had been in a game, an away game, and he had someone like an older lady that would cat sit for him, but that night he like decided to go get the cats instead of just waiting till the next day. So he goes and gets them, and he said he went home, and he probably was asleep for like 5 hours, and he heard Willow, I think, like making noise, and he woke up, and there was literally somebody in his room, and it really freaked him out. And Adalyn hugs him, and he says like he just worries, like it ended up being like a crazy fan or whatever. And he said it just worries him because like what if he would have had a family, and he's thinking like what if Adalyn was in there, like what if somebody, he's like basically because he chose when he was young to be kind of a celebrity, like he's brought this threat into his life essentially. And she feels terrible, and she apologizes for blackmailing him because, I mean, she didn't know that. I mean, blackmail's always terrible, but she didn't know that. And he apologizes for being mean to her. And she leaves the kitchen for a moment, and he gets an email from his agent, which is Michael again, and it's about the Miami Flames, and they are looking for a sporting director. And he also sends the video of. So we switch back over to Adalyn. She comes back into the kitchen, and Cam is furious. So she's like, "What happened? I was gone for 5 minutes." And he asks her about the video, and she's like, "Oh no, he knows." And he is like, "What did your dad do in response to this?" And she's like, "He sent me here." And she says, like, he did what he should have done. Like, I'm guilty. I should have done it. I broke my claws, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, "What would you have done differently?" And he says, "I would have protected you. I would have," because she's like, "Well, would you have gone door to door and, like, demand people delete the video?" And he's like, "Yes, like, I would have done whatever needed to be done." And he picks her up, and he's like, "I know you don't like me too." And she's like, "This is fine." And they cuddle on the couch. Oh. So we're back in Adalyn's POV, and she wakes up, and she's like, I don't know where she is, but she's sitting somewhere, and she has Willow, and she's like, "I'm sexually frustrated." And of course, Cam is behind her. So he hears her say that, and she's like, "Oh, like, not for you." And he says, "Oh, I can prove it's for me." And so he, like, starts flexing his muscles, which, okay, that is not attractive, but whatever. But then he takes his shirt off, and I'm like, okay. So she tells him how he, like, loves to win games, and he says, "No, but you keep giving me reasons to play the long game." And he wants her to do yoga to help her with her panic attacks. And he decides that day to actually take her out into the woods. So they're doing like a little bit of hiking, not much because her ankle's like barely healed. And she's like, "The sun is setting, like, or going down. Like, aren't you not supposed to hike?" And he says, "We're actually not hiking. We're gonna go stargazing." Oh. And he says he actually got the idea when she fell in Brandy's poop and was like laying, like staring at the stars. And he said she just looked so happy, and he had never seen that look on her. And he, like, essentially thinking as like he is basically falling for her. And then like she went out there, and he's like, "You went out there and got that stupid goat out the water in those heels," and like he just loves her, you can tell. And they're out there, and they're cuddling, and he's like, "Are you ready to go home to Miami?" And she was thinking like she just doesn't really know, because that was always her plan, but like as she's been here, she doesn't really feel a part of the Miami Flames anymore. And he asks like, "What happened to you to make you the way you kind of are?" Like, not in a bad way, that's not bad, but he asked her that. And so she tells him about David and how he basically just used her for his position in the business. And essentially, her dad had promised to give him a high position if he would marry her. I guess David comes from like a business family also, so they just worked out. And what she had overheard right before like the video incident, was David was talking to Paul, which is the person that plays Sparkles, the mascot, and he was like she's frigid, boring, and forgetful in bed. And as soon as I get my position, like, or as soon as he got his position, he broke up with her. And he did get the position, and he did do that. But he threatened her dad and was like, if you fire me or demote me, like, I'll go to the media and tell them, like, that you were trying to make me marry your daughter. And so, like, after she overheard them talking, the game started, and then she was, like, at the game, and he was Paul, the mascot, Sparkles, whatever. He was out there, like, dancing, doing his normal thing, and it just triggered her and pissed her off. And she, like, kind of blacked out. Next thing she knew, his head was on the ground. But she just said, like, she just felt betrayed, like, because he was listening, and, like, that's her family. Like, that's all she's ever cared about, and she just felt betrayed by the whole team, and, like, that was just terrible. And Cam tells her that she works so hard to contain herself and is so hard on herself for no reason, and that basically she just kind of like burned herself out, and that's probably why she snapped. And he was like, I'm gonna have to stop myself from getting on a plane to Miami right now because he's livid about what happened. And he tells her, like, since watching the video, he's actually been really turned on by it, and he has to stop himself from kissing her, and, like, he just wants to feel her fire. And she's like, fire. So he asked for permission, and they finally kiss. This book is the longest slow burn, I swear. It is so long. And there's really not a lot of spice. Like, there's really not a lot, because I was like, ugh. But finally. So, and then he calls her good girl. We love that. And they, like, start making out, and she, like, wants to have sex with him. And he's like, no, he's like, I'm not taking anything off me or you. But he's basically is like, I'm in it for, like, the long game. So they have this little session, and she does climax, and she like, I want to return the favor. And he's like, no, like, we're in the middle of the woods. I'm good. And he's like, no, I'm playing the long game. And in the middle of this, Josie calls and tells Adalyn that her mom is in town. Ooh. I don't know if I like Maria or her mom more, because I do love her mom.
Yeah.
So her mom they get to her mom, and her mom starts chastising Cam because she's like, why would you take my daughter out in the woods in the middle of the night? Yeah, facts. I don't know you. And he says that he likes her, talking about Adalyn's mom. And Josie tells them that one of the teams actually ended up being disqualified from the finals. So the Green Warriors are also in the finals now. So we got some good news. And Adalyn, like, jumps on Cam because she's excited. And Adalyn's mom, like, leans over to Josie and was like, oh, they totally banged. And she asked Josie, do you think they're past the situationship stage? And Adalyn's like, what do you even know about that? And she says, I have a TikTok now. And her mom is, like, a Latina, and she has an accent. And she's like, Mom, it's TikTok. And she says, well, clock makes tic-tac sounds. And Adalyn's like, fair. You know, whatever. It's TikTok. You're right. And they get to Cam's house or whatever, and she tells her mom, like, Cam said he's gonna sleep on the couch, and her mom's like, no, you guys can share a bed. Okay, I love this woman. We find out that her mom actually paid Matthew to find her location, and Adalyn's like, what did you have to give him? And she says, I never disclose secrets between me and my children, and that boy is like a son to me. And her mom tells her, like, look, you keep your dad on this pedestal that even you yourself cannot reach, and one day you're really gonna fall from that. And she asks her, like, Adalyn, why didn't you just come home? And she's like, because I'm trying to do this. Like, she's like, I messed up. Like, I need to own up to that. Like, she tries to, like, make reasons for why she stays. And her mom says, your dad is a good man, or at least he was, but he's too wrapped up in his own greatness now, and, like, basically he's a scheme. And she also says that her father has kept secrets from his past, and he won't even tell the mom. And she tells Adalyn, like, your dad pretends like he's from Miami, but he's not. She said she found letters, and when she was pregnant with Adalyn, from a woman somewhere, and he just said that the woman was from his childhood. And she says that's why I never marry him, because Adalyn tells us at one point, like, her dad wanted to get married, but her mom never would, and she always bragged about how she loved being single, yada yada yada. I don't blame her. She makes me think of, like, Sofia Vergara or something like she's so, like, feisty and, like, just fun and loud. I love it. And she says she never married him because he didn't trust her enough with the truth. And Adalyn asks, like, do you think he was cheating? And she says no. Like, she's like, I'm really good at, like, reading people. I don't think he was cheating, but there is something there. And then her mom goes, Cam is very handsome and so tall, so tall and strong. He could probably pick both of us up and all those tattoos. And then she goes, I wonder if he had, and she's like, Mom, please stop. No, stop. No. And her mom asks her, like, is he the reason that she stayed, and does he treat you right? And she says, and then her mom tells her, you have it just as bad for him as he does for you. And she like basically like he looks at you like he wants like to eat you or take a bite out of you, which is something that he had kind of just said to her. And her mom says, like, well, now that I know you're okay, I'm only going to stay one night because I know Cameron won't touch you as long as I hear. And she's like, Mom. And she goes, and I can tell that you really need to be in her. She's like, Mom, please stop. Oh, my God. I would die. Like, my mom had the crush on me. I would be unwell. And so that night, she does sleep in Cam's bed. And she asks him, like, do you feel like I disappear, like, next to my mom? And because she just feels like, you know, her mom is such this bright, fiery personality, and she's always been told that she was boring and like blah. And she asked Cam to tell her a secret. He tells her, I'm still scared from the intruder. I've never dated Jasmine, which she had brought up because she knew who he was. Like, oh, you dated this like fashion star or whatever. And he's like, I never dated her. My agent just like made it look like I did. And then he also tells her, I bought the cabin or the lodge this morning. And she's like, that's not just one secret. And he says, like, I want to give you more than you ever asked for. And
how cute.
I know! And he tells her that he was going to tear that little shack down the back and he'll build her something else. So we switch back over to Cam. He calls his agent about the Miami Flames offer. And he says, like, you know, I watched the video. And the agent, like, starts, like, trying to talk about the video in a bad way. And he cuts him off because he's not letting him talk about Adalyn. And basically his agent tells him that there's a rumor going around that they're getting ready to sell the Miami Flames. And he's like, oh my gosh, like Adalyn wants this team, like she doesn't know. And his agent also asks about the like LA show again. And he's like, tell everybody no to like all the offers. I don't want any of them. And Adalyn, they're at like the sports place or whatever, and Adalyn's like, can you come to my office? And he can tell like, oh, this is something. And she's like, I just want to thank you for all that you've done, and I want to show my gratitude. And so she wants to return the favor from the other night, but she basically is like, you know, I've been thinking about this all day, but like now that you're right here, I'm really losing my fire. And she's like, I need you to lead me. So, and he's very dominant in the bedroom, we can tell. And so he does, and he like tells her what to do, and they have a little bit of a moment. They do not have sex though. And he still like pleasures her basically, so like she didn't really get to like return the favor in the way that she wanted to, because he's like, we're not doing this here. Like he doesn't want to do that there, and he's playing the long game like he's told her. We go back to Adalyn's POV, and they have like a team dinner that they're going to. And the plan is that afterwards, like, this is their night. They're officially going to have sex. And she's like, is it possible to lose your virginity twice? Because she's, like, so looking forward to it. And they're talking, and she cries because he tells her how special it is to him that she didn't expose him, because she decided not to expose him way before they started to be intimate. And so he knows, like, that, you know, she really is a good person. And they hook up. They have sex. And I was like... He doesn't wear a condom. She's like, I'm on the pill. That is not real. Whatever. Don't listen to romance novels. That's not real. Please use protection, people. I mean, they verify that they're both clean or whatever, but still. Stresses me out. Anyways, so the next morning, she's in bed, in Cam's bed. Obviously, she's naked, like, under the covers. And she has Willow, and Matthew's like, are you naked under that cat? And because he FaceTimed her, and she notices that he looks terrible, and she's like, I mean, there's a blanket between me and the cat. And she realizes he's at home in Massachusetts, which is weird. And Cam comes in because Matthew is like, you look, and Cam says, you look thoroughly fucked. And Matthew is like, are you in Cam's bed? Is that his cat? Did you have sex with Cameron Caldoni? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Caldoni. And like every time Matthew talks about him, he calls him Cameron Caldoni. Like and she's like, can you please stop saying his entire name every single time? And he's like, are we becoming brothers-in-laws? And he goes, wait, before, and so like Cam comes against the camera, and he's like, well, before I like turn into a whole fan, he's like, I need to act as her best friend. And he's like, you know, her ex, I hated him. I wanted to break his face, and I kept hoping he was going to give me a good reason that I could do it and not go to jail. But he never did. And he's like, you know, I want you guys to be together and have all the cat babies or real babies that you want. And Cam says, you know, I'm just waiting on her to let me. And she is like internally panicking because she's like, oh my God, we just had sex one time and now you're talking about baby. Like, what is going on? And Matt tells her that there's something that she needs to see in her email, and he just hangs up. So Cam starts like kissing her, and she's like, look, like we need to talk, you know, and he's like, okay. He's like, I'm taking a shower to take care of what's going on with his little arousal situation. And he's like, you do have an invitation. And then he takes his necklace off. So sometimes when he doesn't wear his signet ring, like at practice or games, he puts it on a necklace. So he has the ring on a necklace and he takes it off and puts it on her and tells her it's for good luck. I love it. So she decides to check the email. And the next thing we know that she's in the kitchen and she doesn't know what to do. And essentially, he forwarded her the information about the team being sold. She tells Cam, because he comes out of the shower, and she's like, I have to go find my dad. I need to catch a flight. She started having a panic attack. And she thinks, like, David is possibly blackmailing him because of her. And Cam's like, look, it's not your fault. And she wants to know why he's not shocked. And she realizes that he already freaking knows. And he's like, I only knew for, like, 1 day. And he said it was just rumors, and he really just wanted to find out if it was true before he told her. And she's pissed. Like, she's like, I'm betrayed. Everybody keeps things from me. You're playing games. He's like, I'm not playing a game. And she wants to leave. And he says, like, I didn't want to tell you until I knew for sure because he doesn't want them to take anything else from her. And she says, like, you can't control my emotions. She's like, basically, she feels like he doesn't think she could handle the news. And he says, like, I do. And he says, that doesn't stop me from wanting things not to hurt you. Then we switch back over to Cam, POV, and he's at the game. So this is the finals game. And Maria's there, and she's like, do you know when Miss Adalyn's coming? And he's like, I don't think she's coming. And he's like, you know, she had an emergency back at home. And Maria's like, okay, so then why are you not with her? And he's like, wow, like that's crazy. And so Maria grabs him and is like, okay, well, you braid my hair. It's so cute.
Mm-hmm.
And she asks him while he's braiding her hair, like, do you love Miss Adalyn? And he says yes. And she says, did you tell her? And he says no. And then she goes, well, then she's not going to come back because she won't know where to follow her heart to.
I love that.
She's so cute. And she says that Adalyn makes the same face when Cam touches her that Brandy makes when she realizes that Maria is the one petting her. And basically she says, like, because obviously, again, Brandy's the blind goat. And she's like, that makes her, like, feel safe because she knows it's me. And he's like, oh my God, this 10-year-old or whatever is giving me the inside of life. And she's like, can I see your phone? And she looks at her hair and she says, she said, your braids are terrible. And you need to ask Miss Adalyn to teach you. And he says, well, when am I going to ask her? And she says, when you get her back. So Adalyn we go back to her POV. She's flown into Miami and she's at the like gate trying to get in. And the dude will not let her in. And she's like, do you not know who I am? But her assistant comes up and she's like, let her in. So she gets in and she like runs straight like for her dad's office. She's still wearing like her hiking boots or jeans, like not her normal thing. Her assistant's like, you look great. And her dad is in there having a meeting with David. And I don't know, one of them is holding up the freaking jersey for the Miami Flames with the energy drink logo of her face. Like, could you not be any worse? And her dad tells David to leave and he's like, this is not your office yet. And he looks at Adalyn, he's like, oh, you look like your mom today. And he asks Adalyn basically like, do you resent me? And does she resent me?
And I was like, who is she? Which I had a little inkling.
I did not.
But I was not like.
I had no clue because I'm oblivious all the time. And Adalyn realizes that he's not talking about her mom. And he says Josephine. Josie. And she starts thinking about the letters that her mom told her about. And she remembers them also saying, like, Green Oaks has a guardian angel looking over them. Like, nothing bad happens here. And she's like, my dad is the investor. Like, he's the person that's been taking care of it. And her dad tells her that Josie is her half-sister. And he thought that she came back because she figured it out. He says he sent her there, one, because he thought it'd be good for her, but he also did expect her to figure it out. And then he kind of, like, shames her for not figuring it out.
Right.
Like,
and I'm like, ooh.
Why would I just assume that some random lady in the middle of a nowhere town is my sister? Like, that's weird. She tells him that she's there about David, and he says, like, there's no stopping the sale. Like, just go home, whatever. I'll send my car. And she's like, I'm not going to let you dismiss me. Like, you always do that. She tells him why she attacked Sparkles, and he says, like, oh, wow, I almost lost a club over that. Like, why are you letting that affect you so much? He never stands up for her. And he tells her, like, the club's in debt. That's why I'm selling it, so I can make a little bit of profit before, you know, it goes bad. And he tells her he invested in the town so that Josie wouldn't have to grow up in the same sad town he did. And that's where he's from. He's from Green Oaks, which, remember, the mom was like, he's not from Miami. And he tells her, I've only ever been back there one time, and he basically had, like, a one-night stand. And it was right before he even met her mom, and so he's basically had to pay for it since. And he's, like, you know, taking care of Josie from a distance financially. And she asked him, like, did you ever plan to let me take over for the team? And he's like, essentially, he says no. He's like, you know, you can go into real estate. Like, we have all these other things, but, like, no, you can't run this company. And he says, like, you know, you should just be happy that we're getting a profit and we're selling the team to David and his dad. And she tells him, you have 24 hours to tell Mom and Josie the truth and that he needs to clear the Vasquez debt as well. And she walks out. We go back over to Cam, and he is in Miami looking for Adalyn. And like, he's been calling her, and she finally answers. And she says, I'm headed home. And he says, like, please don't go back to your apartment yet. Like, I'm coming. And she's like, no, I meant Green Oaks, and I meant you. You guys are my home. And he pulls up at, like, the place or whatever, and she asks him, like, he gets out, they like get together, and she asks him to tell her that he loves her, and he does. He says, I fucking love you. And she says the same thing back, and he's like, I'll buy the freaking flame, like, if that's what you want. And she's like, no, like, all I need is you. And she asked if they won the game that day, and he said, yes, so the girls won the championship. And he says he even called the media and, like, did some press, and she's like, like, he exposed himself for her. And while they're embraced, Cam looks up and notices that the assistant, Kelly, who used to be Adalyn's assistant, is there. And she's like, oh, like, don't bother, like, don't mind me.
Right.
And then also there's a man coming down the hall, and it's David. So he goes up to David and grabs him by his freaking collar, and he's like, thank you, like, for being an idiot, basically, because, like, you're the only reason I get to be with Adalyn now. And David recognizes him and tells Kelly, because Kelly is over there recording this whole interaction, and he's like, if you don't put that camera down, she's fired. And she's like, I heard everything that happened and I quit. And Adalyn tells Cam, like, look, I don't want you to get in trouble for me. So she goes over there and she punches David.
Yes.
I was like, yes, he deserves it. And David's like, you're not going to get away with this. And Kelly says, bitch, please. And she says, like, I recorded the conversation Adalyn just had with her dad. And, like, I've been recording things. And Adalyn tells Cam, like, I'm thinking of starting a youth club. And there's a position open if you want it. And then we go to the epilogue, and it's a little over a year later. So they're having the 1-year celebration of the youth soccer club, and they've moved out of Green Oaks, like, to be closer to wherever they started this club. So it's somewhere in North Virginia still. And they're having, like, a face-off, Cam versus Adalyn, to, like, do a kickoff thing for this party or whatever. And she tells us, like, Cam started therapy, and actually so did she. So they both are working through their issues. David has been ruining the Miami Flames, which we knew he would.
Yep.
And her dad has tried to make amends with her and Josie. Like, they're not all the way better yet, but he's trying. They've made Tony the assistant coach, so he's at college now, but he's also still staying around to coach. And Josie and Matthew have a little bit of banter. Matthew's on FaceTime, and I'm like, oh, God, this must be the next book. And Matthew is on the phone, and he just says, like, hey, is anybody staying in your house back in Green Oaks? And he's like, I need a favor. And the book ends. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's the next book. That's the next book. And that's the end. Yay! So, where do we want to start?
Okay, let's start with ratings.
Okay, so I did enjoy this, but I gave it a 3.5. The burn was so slow. People like slow burns. It's not my favorite thing. Like, I do like enemies to lover, but I want them to, like, hatefully love each other in the beginning or something. I don't know. And there wasn't, like, a ton of spice in this book. Like, there was really, like, they only have sex that one time. And then, like, they have those other little moments. But it wasn't, like, super spicy or anything like that. But it was very cute and lots of funny moments. So, I gave it a 3.5.
I also really enjoyed this book, but also gave it a 3.5. Like you said, it was a very slow burn. And I like slow burns. But this was a little too slow. But, you know, I have a special place in my heart for soccer. I played soccer. I started playing soccer when I was 3 and played all the way up until my junior year of high school. I got a concussion, couldn't play anymore, unfortunately. But
I cannot play soccer. I cannot kick a ball and look up.
Love soccer. Soccer is so when I saw this book, I was like, yep, I want to read this. I did enjoy it. Especially the little banter and just like you said, sweet, cute moments. But yeah, I give it a 3.5 as well.
We are in agreement. Okay, next.
Let's do casting.
Okay, I can do mine. So I am so cliche, and I know that he's entirely too old for this, but I said David Beckham.
Okay. Okay.
Cam. I was like, I feel like he could fit the picture, and I know like a younger one, but yeah. So I was like, that's so cliche, but I don't care. Also, I didn't mention like Kim obviously calls it football throughout it, but we're in America, we say soccer. You know, we're boring over here. Whatever. And then for Adalyn, I said Aubrey Plaza.
Okay. Okay, so I got 3 castings. For Adalyn, I did Ana de Armas.
Oh, see, that's funny.
Yeah, so when you said, "Isn't there?" I was like, "Yes." For Cameron, I did Taron Egerton. He, if you watch like The Kingsman or anything like, he's lovely. And then for Josie, Cara Kilmer. If you watched Chicago Fire, she plays Sylvie. But yeah, those are my castings.
I did have one question.
Yeah.
Look, so what was Cam and Josie's relationship? Because I feel like, okay, so she asked him to like volunteer. Is it just because they live there? Like, yeah. I feel like it was like hinted at, like, because I feel like Adalyn a couple times was like, why is he like coaching? Like, what's the thing? Like, I don't know. I feel like we never came back to it. Maybe there was nothing there and he just was being nice, but
right. Because I feel like maybe it's just because it's a Josie thing, because they couldn't seem to say no to Josie.
Yeah. I was like, I was like typing my summary and I was like, wait a minute. Like, I feel like did I miss something? I don't know.
Yeah, I just think maybe Josie had that kind of personality that you
I
couldn't or didn't want to say no to.
Yeah.
But so my the discussion portion, I don't have really any questions, but there were certain parts and certain characters that I really want to talk about. First of all, being Josie. Honestly, I adored Josie. I don't know. She just seemed like the stereotypical small town, like everybody loves her kind of mayor. And I don't know. What were your thoughts on Josie?
I did like the other thing I was like picturing when I was like reading this was, do you ever watch Ginny and Georgia?
No.
Well, they're in like this small town, and that's what it made me like think of, like the coffee shop, and like so like it just made me think of that. But yes, I know I did like Josie, and she's just like funny, and I love how she was like pushing them together. And
yeah, no. So I when I was thinking of Josie, I was thinking, I don't know if you've ever watched Virgin River.
I have.
Well, that's right. And honestly, kind of, not really, but similar circumstance. The mayor brought in this nurse from out of town, and she was a mayor that kind of got on people's nerves, but everybody loved her at the same time, and so that's kind of what I pictured, and yeah, the relationship to her community kind of wise. But and Maria, yes, I absolutely adored Maria. She was cute and really witty at the same time.
Yes.
Like that moment where she was like, "Did you tell her that you loved her?" Like,
I know, she's
my
perfect.
heart.
She's so cute.
My heart. What else was I gonna say? We kind of touched on it a little bit, but there's probably gonna be a second book in this. Yeah, which I'm here for. Yeah. I'm here for that.
I was like, oh, I'm like, what do you need to come to Green House? Like,
right.
I'm like, yeah. So there's something brewing. I was like, yep, it's happening. It's happening.
But I think that's all that I have.
All right. So our next two episodes. So our next episode is a two-parter. So we are doing Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, and it is long. Luckily, that book actually splits itself into 2 parts. I was like, that works great. So we will be doing part 1 next week, and then part 2 the week after that. And okay, you guys have had a month. What time? I don't know. You've had time. Read the book.
And if you haven't, just read it and come back.
Yes. But like I said, just literally 5 minutes before we started recording, I just finished, and I'm upset. I'm not happy. So I can't wait to talk about it. But yeah, so also, if you're not already, follow us on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Retrospective, and like our episodes, leave a comment.
Yes, and especially for this next one coming up, if you have any theories, please send those in, and we'd love to go over them.
Absolutely. I can't wait. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.